another nail in my coffin.
Hey everybody, it's me, your friendly neighborhood Uncle Pete, and this is my series Nails in a Coffin, where we learn that with great kills, there must also come great nails. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you are new here. This is my Nails in a Coffin series. I perform a kill analysis on the on-screen kills in horror movies, and I rate how well a person responds to a life-threatening situation. And I use Nails in a Coffin as a rating system. One nail in the coffin means like the victim made a lot of dumb decisions that aided their demise, like running upstairs instead of running outside. We've all seen stupid decisions in horror movies that you're yelling at the screen. Those type of people get one nail in the coffin. But the victim can get up to 4 nails in the coffin, such as if they fought really hard, they sacrificed themselves to save others. You know, you've all seen it. So the smarter you are, the more nails you get. And we always know getting more nails is always a great thing. This week, I'm covering 1976's The Town That Dreaded Sundown. Now, this film was kind of loosely based on a series of murders that took place in Texarkana in 1946, known as the Texarkana Moonlight Murders. Those crimes were committed by an unidentified serial killer known as the Phantom Killer. Now, this film really drives home the fact that the movie you're about to see is a true story, and only the names have been changed. Now, the locations are a bit different from the movie to where they actually occurred. However, from what I read, the general outline of the murders follow closely to reality, which I find really interesting, and it made this film kind of intriguing to me. Some artistic licenses were taking place, which would make sense. I mean, this still is a movie, and it does have to entertain the audience. But in both cases, the Phantom Killer was never apprehended or even identified. Well, there's my intro, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get down to nailing The Town That Dreaded Sundown. Now, this movie does start with narration, which I actually like since it does play out like a documentary. And this, with the film hammering home that it's a true story, really makes it feel real. And I think that was a great way to draw the audience in and already, prepare them to feel fear. When the movie starts, it's Sunday, March 3rd, 1946. Sammy and his girlfriend Linda May are at Lover's Lane. Now, I did get a chuckle at Sammy pulling this move to put his arm around Linda May. Eventually, he has his head on her lap, and he's trying to make a move, I guess. And Linda May hears something from outside the car. She turns the radio down, and we see a man walking up to the front of the car. He pops the hood, yanks out some wires, disabling the car. So Sammy tries in vain to start the car again and again, which I don't really understand. So the man walks over to a window, breaks it with a piece of metal. He pulls Sammy out of the car, dragging him away. Linda May is screaming. You can see blood on the broken glass in the window. She's trying to figure out what to do. Well, then the Phantom Killer goes to the other side of the car. He attacks Linda May, breaks into the car. She's screaming, trying to fight back, but he gets inside the car and does eventually attack her. We then cut to the credits, and we find out a short while later that the next morning, Linda was found on the side of the road, and we learn that Sammy is also alive. At the hospital, we learn that Linda, she actually wasn't raped, but her chest and stomach were bitten and chewed, while Sammy was beaten about the head and neck with a heavy blunt instrument. We jump to 3 weeks later. It's now March 24th, and this mysterious man has yet to be found. While investigating at Lover's Lane, we have Deputy Ramsey. He's hearing gunshots, and he runs back to his car and follows the sound of the gunshots, and he finds another parked car. He gets out, takes a look, but the car's empty, and he hears more gunshots. He calls it into dispatch. He runs towards where the sounds of the shots came from, and eventually he finds the bodies of Howard and Emma Lou. Howard is lying face down in the mud. He was beaten and shot, and then the deputy finds Emma Lou, who's tied to a tree, and unfortunately she was tortured and shot to death as well. Both Howard and Emma Lou were killed off screen. We didn't see any part of their attack, so I'm going to be unable to give them a nail rating since obviously we didn't see what happened. So the town obviously is kind of in panic mode, and the stores start selling all their guns and locks. Citizens are terrified, and it's a curfew after sunset. The sheriff's department called in help from a famous criminal investigator, the Lone Wolf, Captain Morales from the Texas Rangers. Deputy Ramsey, he's talking to the Lone Wolf, and he tells him his theory that the Phantom Killer only attacks every 21 days. So the next day is going to fall on April 14th, which is the day of the high school prom. And the sheriff's department is setting up decoys around town with a bunch of men in the sheriff's department dressed up as ladies, and they're parked in cars all around the town at various lovers' lanes. After the prom, Peggy leaves her boyfriend Roy, and she's actually talked to him going to Spring Lake Park despite her worries about the town's warnings. They stay parked for a while, but it's getting late, and Peggy needs to go home. Roy was trying to probably get a move in there, but Eventually, then we see a man walking up to the car. It is the Phantom Killer. Peggy tells Roy, hey, we really gotta go. So he eventually goes to drive home, and as he does, the Phantom Killer jumps on the side of the car door. He's trying to break in. The door is open. Roy's driving around in circles. And eventually, Peggy is screaming. So Roy and the the Phantom Killer fall out of the car. Peggy's running. The Phantom Killer is beating up Roy. She couldn't control the car. It crashes into some trees. The Phantom Killer knocks Roy unconscious. Peggy sees this. She's running through the woods. She's scared, but she falls down a bunch because it's a movie. Phantom Strangler catches up to her, picks her up, drags her to a tree where he ties her hand around a tree. After he ties her up, he does go over to Roy, finish the job, shooting him a couple times as he was trying to climb up a fence. Then he goes back to Peggy, ties a knife to the end of her trombone slide, and she's tied to a tree, and he's playing a trombone as he's stabbing her in the back as she's screaming, and he's kind of having fun with himself as he kills her. Now, there aren't too many kills in this movie on screen, but we do have some to nail, and I'm going to give Roy 1.5 nails in a coffin. First off, I don't know what he was doing when the Phantom Killer was hanging on a door. He just kept driving in circles, which did no one any good. He could have slammed on the brakes to try and shake the guy off. He could have gone straight. I mean, there had to have been a road there since they actually drove there. If he did go straight, he could have sped up, then slammed on the brakes. Or, he was just driving in circles, and it really didn't do much good for him. Also, they were just sitting in the car, and it was almost 3 a.m. They weren't doing anything. They were just kind of hanging out. There was a town-wide curfew, and he just ignored it since he wanted to go to the park with Peggy, but they didn't do anything there. So what was the reward for taking the risk, I guess? I mean, I could give him the benefit of the doubt if he wanted to, go get laid pretty much, but they weren't even doing anything, as I said, so what was the risk for? But Roy does escape getting 1 nail in a coffin since he did try and get away after he was nearly beaten unconscious. Then again, he really didn't even try and save his girlfriend, so I don't know. I guess I'm going to stick with it and give him 1.5 nails in a coffin. Now, Peggy, she earned herself 1 nail in a coffin. Once Roy fell out of the car, she got behind the wheel, but I think she forgot she had feet or how to use pedals or how to turn the wheel. She just kind of grabbed onto the wheel and crashed it into a tree. And then she was stumbling through the woods for a bit, but the Phantom Killer caught up to her because it's a movie, and of course she has to trip a bunch of times. And while he was dragging her back to the tree, she wasn't screaming for help or just trying to fight back or anything. I know she just crashed the car and she was in shock, but she wasn't knocked out or anything, but she really didn't have any fight in her. She just was quietly saying, please don't hurt me, please don't hurt me. She wasn't screaming, yelling, fighting, kicking, screaming, punching, anything. She was just saying, please don't hurt me. Yeah, there wasn't much fight in her, so all I can really do for her is give her 1 nail in the coffin. For our next and final kill in the movie, wasn't a lot. We jump ahead to May 3rd. We see the Phantom Killer is watching as Helen Reed, Marianne from Gilligan's Island, is leaving a grocery store. He follows her home, and later on that night, she's sitting in a chair, brushing her hair. Her husband, Floyd, is sitting on the couch reading the newspaper. She asks him if he hears anyone walking outside. He doesn't hear anything, but we then see the Phantom Killer appear outside the window behind Floyd while he's reading the paper, and he does shoot him twice in the head, killing him. Only 3 on-screen deaths in this movie. One of the fewest, I believe, since I've been covering Nails in the Coffin. But I'm going to give Floyd 2 nails in the coffin. Poor guy never knew what hit him. He was just reading the paper in his living room. There was nothing he could have done. Nothing was his fault. The best I can do for someone who's the unfortunate victim of circumstance is 2 nails in the coffin. Like I said, if you are new here, if the victim didn't stand any chance, like they just got killed from behind, they never knew what hit them or whatnot, I'd normally go down the middle and give them 2 nails in a coffin since they didn't even have an opportunity to make a good or a bad decision. So Floyd, 2 nails in the coffin. Upon hearing a gunshot, Helen sees her husband dead. She immediately goes to the phone to call the operator. Phantom Killer breaks inside the door. He shoots her. The bullet hits her in the cheek. She's leaning over the side of a chair. He shoots her again, but the bullet just grazes her. She does fall down in the kitchen. The Phantom Killer is kind of admiring what he did to Roy, but Helen's not dead, and she drags herself outside the house. Phantom Killer is chasing her through this field, and Helen is trying to get away, crawling. She eventually finds her neighbor's house, and she collapses in front of his door. Phantom Killer is slowly approaching, but the man who owns the house comes outside with a shotgun. The Phantom Killer sees this, and he doesn't know what to do. There's a dog barking. He gets all freaked out. The man sees Helen. He's telling his wife to go call for help. Phantom Killer knows he really can't do nothing because this man is armed, and he runs away and escapes. The next day, Captain Morales and Deputy Ramsey they receive a report about a stolen car that matches the first set of murders. They're investigating a sand pit, looking around. They see the Phantom Killer approach on top of this hill. Deputy Ramsey standing there. The Phantom Killer, you think is going to shoot him, but Captain Morales shoots at him. Of course, he misses. He's chasing him through some trains. The Phantom Killer jumps over train tracks right as he just barely gets grazed. The two cops are shooting underneath the car with the shotgun and pistols, and eventually they are able to actually wound the Phantom Killer, hitting the leg, but the train is still passing, and they really can't get by. Phantom Killer was able to escape. The two cops cross the side of the tracks, but it's too late, and the Phantom Killer has evaded capture once again. And the movie ends with the narrator saying that the Phantom Killer has never been caught, and he actually never was. It's now 1976, and the local movie theater is playing the town that dreaded Sundown, the movie we just finished watching. And then we see what appears to be the legs of the Phantom Killer in the line at the movie. There we go, ladies and gentlemen. Those are all mine. Nails in a coffin for the town that dreaded Sundown. Here's a quick summary since there wasn't a lot. These are all the nails I've awarded. So, I guess I'll see you here next week when I cover the town that dreaded Sundown, which came out in 2014. And this movie is a meta sequel remake. So, that movie has a lot more kills, so yeah, there'll be a lot more to cover in that one. But I like this somewhat forgotten slasher from the 70s. There was a great meta aspect to it, and I kind of like that. And seeing the Phantom Killer at the end, while they were showing the movie that we just watched, it was a nice touch to emphasize the true nature of this story. I like the way the film played out, because the killer could have been anybody. He wasn't unstoppable. He made mistakes, and he didn't even kill everybody he attacked. And that kind of made it more based in reality, I believe. And I think that's what the filmmakers were going for. Also, I think the abrasion marks on the film stock gave the movie a great classic feel, and it had a great grindhouse feel to it as well. But there we are, ladies and gentlemen. Take care of yourselves, be safe, and be good to each other. I am your friendly neighborhood Uncle Pete, and remember, with great kills, there must also come great nails.